Oh. Now that I've moved into my new apartment, I don't know what I should review today.
Why don't you do a massively multiplayer online RPG? You haven't done one yet.
Yeah, but which one?
Well, what's the funnest one you ever played?
That's easy. City of Heroes.
Well then, do City of Heroes.
Well, it was fun when it first came out, but it started to suck really, really hard.
When is the last time you played?
A couple years ago?
Maybe you should revisit it.
Maybe you're right. I should give it another try. Let's load this baby up. Put my password in. Wait, what the hell? Why can't I log in? Why isn't it letting me log in? I'm gonna go to the website. I've re-registered, so... fuck. Okay, I finally got the account activation problem resolved. So I can actually log into the game now. If you've never played the game before, you'll first be presented with a list of all the servers that you can play on and create a new character on that server. The first thing you're really going to notice about the character creation is that you have a huge amount of freedom to totally customize your character, the way that they look. With very few exceptions, you should pretty much be able to make any kind of character that you can think of, as long as they're a humanoid superhero or supervillain type of character. For example, I made G-Kaiser, a character from my webcomic of the same name, which just really goes to show how flexible this system really is. You can customize every single part about your character, including what their weapons, if they have weapons, they look like, and what the power animations look like, the colors, and you can actually choose from several different animation types as well, which is pretty cool. Now as for the gameplay of the game, everything about it really does feel like a superhero world, especially the combat. Some of the powers that your characters have enable you to knock down enemies, knock them backwards, stun them into a daze, and so forth. Many characters use energy beam attacks, guns, maces, swords, claws. Aside from the really exotic powers like super stretching and acid spitting, characters can pretty much do anything they could do in the comic book worlds. One of the very good points about the game is that it's very quest-oriented, and you don't just grind on respawning mobs to level up. A quest-focused leveling path helps break up some of the monotony of the game found in earlier massively multiplayer online games like Ultimate Online, Nexus TK, and EverQuest. However, I do think a lot of the quests force the player to run around the world too goddamn much. There are too many missions forcing you to go on a new zone just to talk to an NPC and then run to a completely different zone to talk to yet another NPC. And many NPCs give you quests to run a zone that could take you 10 minutes just to get to the other zone and find their NPC. Sure, there is a train that runs between zones and helps cut down on some of the running. However, only certain trains run to certain zones. So, and not all the trains will appear in every zone. Why the hell isn't there just one train and it takes you to any zone you want to go? This run around the whole world design doesn't seem to serve any purpose but to waste the player's time, which is really bad in a massively multiplayer online game, because if you were in a group, but it takes you 20 minutes to start the next mission, you're going to lose people in your party, or they're just going to go off and do a different mission without you. And when I say waste your time, I really mean it. Completing these go talk to this NPC in a different zone missions will reward you nothing. No experience, no inspiration, no items, zip, not a zilch. All it does is unlock a mission which you could get experience for. So you basically waste 10 to 20 minutes for nothing. For nothing. Yeah.
It's all a Nemesis plot.
Hey, shut your mouth. It's not all a Nemesis plot, alright? It's just bad game design. Anyway, the power enhancement system is flawed for the same reason as the NPC zone hopping is. On paper, it seems like a really good idea. Treat every power a character has like it's a piece of equipment you can enhance Final Fantasy VII materia style. You still want enhancement upgrades to improve the effectiveness of that power. However, only certain NPCs sell certain enhancements. One zone might only sell enhancements for characters level 20 to 30, and another might sell the enhancements for level 35 and 40. This is insane because the game design forces the player to replace all their enhancements every 5 levels or so, and if you don't, then your character blows hard because their powers basically have no items equipped. And you're essentially naked. So every 5 levels you have to run between zones to replace your enhancements. If you have a lot of slots, you have to spend a lot of time doing that. At level 40 it took me about half an hour to re-equip. The party I was in completed 2 missions without me while I was screwing around with these enhancements. The enhancements losing effectiveness if you out-level them is a really bad design because it serves no real purpose but to waste your time as a player. I mean, it's ridiculous. Where games like World of Warcraft go for the very fine-tuned approach to game design, City of Heroes is a little bit more random in how things go, and this is really seen in the mission design. You tend to fight through the same dungeon layouts again and again. This does get a little boring after a while, especially after you've cleared your 300th generic office building dungeon. The arch-villain fights are also just power spam fests and require no more skill to clear than any other boss fight. The gameplay is just too repetitive. If I wasn't doing this review, I would not have kept leveling all the way to 50 because of the lack of depth to the gameplay. It's just not very deep at all. In short, I got bored around level 35. One positive element of the game design is that the defense attribute works more like evade in other games. While a game like WoW has tankers reduce the amount of damage they take, tanking in City of Heroes revolves around not getting hit to begin with. The benefit of this design is that a stereotypical healer class of defender doesn't have to sit there spamming heal while the tank endures a constant stream of incoming damage. Defenders are free to attack just as often as other classes do, and many of their power sets just increase defense and regeneration, and don't actually have heals. This makes defenders more fun to play than a stereotypical healer class, and I wish more games would follow this example. One drawback of this design is that the developers have, for whatever reason, made it so non-tank classes can reach the defense caps. It is possible for everyone to basically be an unstoppable god who can solo enemies that would be equivalent of a raid boss in other games. I believe this is a big flaw because it reduces the importance of team play in the game, which is needed for building a community. So while this kind of design makes City of Heroes a soloist dream, it makes it a nightmare for people who want to party. Granted, a player does have to spend a long time acquiring the enhancements to be this powerful, but it's really not that hard to do. It's just time consuming. That's not challenge. That's just amount of time. Another thing about the so-called raid bosses in this game, which are arch-villains. In a game like WoW, classes are balanced for raids by having raid bosses with rage timers. If you don't defeat the boss in a certain amount of time, they become uber powerful and smoke your raid. This encourages players to build their characters correctly. City of Heroes doesn't have that layer of depth, so players build to be defensive when they should be offensive, thereby becoming nearly invincible, at which point the game loses much of its challenge. You have the rogue equivalent class of scrappers going for defense caps, thereby becoming tanks and doing less DPS than they're capable of. But it doesn't matter because arch-villains can't even hit them. Truth be told, arch-villains have artificial intelligence identical to every other enemy in the game. It requires no special strategies to defeat them. The only thing that defines the arch-villain is that they have more health than other enemies do and they give more experience. Otherwise, you just wail on them and they die like every other enemy in the game. Even the old 8-bit Mega Man games have bosses that require more strategy than an arch-villain in City of Heroes. The reason this is bad design is because having bosses that require actual strategies to defeat helps break up some of the monotonous of the, just go around, I want to find this enemy, I'm going to start hitting them, go on to the next enemy. Granted, this isn't a problem unique to City of Heroes. There are lots of massively multiplayer online games who make this mistake, but I think it's worth pointing out that there is a lot of wasted potential in the boss designs of this game. Another complaint I have is in the power set pools. Too many of the auxiliary powers are pretty much required, such as stamina and health, combat jumping, acrobatics, weave, etc. and so forth. This offends my keep it simple approach to game design. Everything that a character requires to do their primary job should be found within the archetype power sets. You shouldn't have to pick up your optional power sets in order to be able to function as a character of that class. For melee characters, it's incredibly hard to keep up with incoming damage from enemies if you don't have tough, weave, combat jumping, and health. And for everyone, it's impossible to keep up with your endurance needs if you don't have stamina. This means everyone tries to take these powers and everyone becomes more cookie cutter. This wouldn't be hard for the developers to fix if they just deleted these powers and instead tweaked the archetype powers so they offer these effects. For things like acrobatics, many characters must take powers that will otherwise never actually use, therefore wasting a power spot just to get a power they need in order to do their primary role like a tank. This seems like bad design to me. The easiest way I can think of fixing this problem is changing the way endurance works. There really isn't any good reason to make the toggle buffs consume endurance. That just adds unnecessary endurance drain on characters. If none of the toggles consumed endurance, then powers like stamina wouldn't even be needed. But another easy fix would be just to make every archetype power pull have a power that has the effects of stamina, and a power that has the effects of hasten. Then remove both stamina and hasten, replacing them with something that not everyone must take in order to be able to optimally function as a character of that archetype. I'm also very critical of the fact that tier 9 powers are not always as good as they should be. This is supposed to be your best power, and is not as good as just spamming 3 lower tier powers. I mean, it's basically like saying Goku's punch it and kick and headbutt attack is much better than his Kamehameha attack, you know? One's a big ass fireball, and the other one's just him punching and kicking shit. And just punching and kicking shit does more damage than throwing a fucking laser beam. Doesn't make any goddamn sense, does it? But this is how City of Heroes works. If this design is not intentional, it's a design flaw. But if it's intentional, the designers have made a game where the power that takes the longest to get is worthless. And that trips up new players because it's counterintuitive to the RPG design philosophy of time investment equals get good reward. The rewards that take longer to get should be better than the rewards that take less time to get. This really isn't rocket science. The auction house system is totally broken. Because there isn't enough drains in the game economy, unless you have a level 50 character, you will always be outbid by higher level players. Any invented enhancements over level 20 are worth more money than my character earned getting to level 30. Sure, you can theoretically buy the recipes and materials to make the invented enhancements rather than buy the ready-to-use versions off the auction house, but good luck farming the materials or finding them to buy when you, as a new player, have such little inventory space to store items for later usage. The inventory space for new players should be at least 50 spots in your bank by default, rather than less spots than I have fingers on my hand. As for obtaining the money, it wasn't until I started selling arch-villain drops from level 40 plus missions and rare recipes in the auction house that I was able to afford to make a set of inventor origins, because even low-level ones were worth over 100 million in cash. What the developers should have done is make it so you can't sell an invented enhancement for a higher price than that enhancement ought to be worth. Letting a level 10 enhancement be worth over 1 million inspiration just allows the market to exist solely for people who have been playing the game for years, and makes the game more inaccessible to new players than it should be. These low-level invented enhancements aren't even that good, and the only reason you'd even want them is so you don't have to replace your enhancements every 3 freaking missions, because that's about as many as it takes for you to out-level something. As for the endgame, wanna know what kind of endgame City of Heroes has? None. Nada, zip, zilch. There is no endgame in this game. This is probably one of the big reasons the servers have very low populations. City of Heroes is all about the journey to level 50, whereas most other monthly multiplayer online games are about keeping that journey going even after you reach the highest level. You're supposed to build this really cool character and then do really cool stuff with this character that you worked really hard to build. But no, in City of Heroes, just roll a new character. That's the payoff. You get to roll a new character and start over from the bottom of the chain. Besides rolling a new character and prestige grinding for your supergroup, there isn't much to do at level 50. Granted, there are some task forces, which are basically raids, for level 50 characters, but the rewards aren't terribly impressive unless you just care about experiencing the story of the game. Now, some people might think the lack of an endgame and PvP content isn't a big deal, citing this stuff doesn't appeal to City of Heroes subscribers. The problem with this line of thinking is that the endgame and PvP content in City of Heroes is severely lacking. It is foolish to believe content that doesn't exist won't appeal to the player base just because they aren't using the content that doesn't exist. Every other majorly popular game from World of Warcraft to Ragnarok Online has endgame and PvP content. The reason this is there is to appeal to a hardcore player base, who will then encourage their casual gaming friends, ranging from coworkers to siblings to significant others, to play the game with them. Casual gamers generally don't encourage friends to play because the majority of them don't stick with the game for very long. Casual gamers also don't tend to spend hours writing game guides for their players, which is really needed for new players of the game of this complexity. For a game that has been around as long as it has, City of Heroes has very few fan sites devoted to it, and those fan sites are pretty much just guild sites, and many of them are hardly ever updated. Trying to find up-to-date information on how to perform a quest, unlock a costume piece, or even build your character can be very frustrating, because many of the hardcore gamers who used to do this stuff have long since left the game. So without content that appeals to hardcore gamers, you are left with mostly casual gamers, who may not stick around long and therefore make it harder to build a dedicated community on any one server. Sure, the forums are active, but the servers inside the game are largely dead, unless you just want to sit and talk to people all day while pretending to be a superhero, but not actually doing anything heroic like clearing missions. I know I'm criticizing the game a lot here, but I'm doing so for a reason. I believe a lot of the things I've complained about help explain why City of Heroes is a fairly low population game. During certain hours, the servers are practically dead. Playing 6 PM to 8 PM Central Time, I didn't find anyone to party with. On the plus side, the Exemplar system enables you to group with people much higher level. My level 5 Scrapper jumped to level 13 in about half an hour when I partied with some level 40 characters. On the downside, finding any parties can be hard at certain hours, and sometimes parties break up because people don't like waiting half an hour for someone to talk to a stream of NPCs in different zones and or restock their enhancements. The game also gets really boring really fast, and the bosses are chumps, and PvP is pretty much non-existent, because people tend to use the PvP events to engage in hero and villain role-playing, and don't actually fight. Personally, I think this is because there is no unique rewards for PvPing. There are also a couple minor other quibbles that I think really hurts the game. The game's music does not loop. Near as I can tell, there isn't any way to make it loop either. This is extremely strange. It makes the game very, very depressing to play in many areas. There are major glitches that I experienced with the Mac client. No matter what graphic options I chose, it was always screwed up, especially with certain powers like Glacial Shield and Ice Armor in the tunnels and sewer areas. And sometimes it can make the game almost unplayable. The game doesn't have a good pickup group system for helping you form parties with random players. You search for teammates the old-fashioned way, spamming chat channels and randomly inviting people into the user list. This game has been around almost a decade, so there is no reason it can't have a decent system for helping you find party members. Because of the sidekick and exemplar system, the majority of the players don't even care what level a mission is, they just want to do them, so a system like this would make a dramatic difference. The achievement system. City of Heroes was doing achievements before achievements were popular, only City of Heroes called them badges. Problem is, the majority of achievements serve absolutely no functional purpose whatsoever. The only badges which give a reward like a special power or a health bonus, these badges require you to obtain a dozen other badges to unlock. This is a bad design in a game where bosses don't even drop lead items, which you can equip on your character to look cool. Every badge needs to have a tangible reward at the time of obtaining the badge. And no, having a small little graphic and a menu is not a reward. That's basically saying, hey, you did a really good job, here's a t-shirt. It's a cop-out and it's a bad design because it discourages most players. Each task force badge should give a bonus. You shouldn't have to do all of them to get that one bonus. This change would make it work more like conventional raid design in another type of game, and offer more tangible and obvious rewards to players. The raid badges by themselves don't do anything. You have to collect the whole set to get a 5% max HP increase bonus. So basically, you have to do all 6 task force missions of the game in order to get the task force badge that gives you that small bonus. If this was a better design, each quest chain would reward you with a 1% max HP bonus, which serves the same purpose, but the reward is more tangible and reliably given to the player. As for PvP, near as I can tell, there is nothing to gain from PvP that can't already be obtained from PvE play. This is why the PvP maps are pretty much dead, or used by some players for role-playing between villains and heroes. Literally. Developers, when people are not using your PvP maps to PvP, but are instead using them to roleplay, your PvP game is badly designed. You know why PvP events in World of Warcraft are popular? Because there are things that can only be obtained through PvP, and players want that stuff. If the rewards were the same as PvE, then people wouldn't PvP that much. Some people believe PvP needs to be for people who enjoy PvP. This is flawed. You can make PvP appeal to everyone if the rewards are worth it. And just because some players might say they hate PvP, doesn't mean they won't spend hours upon hours engaging in PvP if they believe the reward is worth it, because the majority of them will. Here is the big problem people don't get about player feedback. Players lie. Players lie a lot. They will say they really don't like something, but they will spend months and months and months doing that activity because they want the reward. You know what that means? That means the gameplay is probably effective. A good PvP system encourages people who aren't hardcore about PvP to engage in PvP, because a good PvP system needs teams. A team PvP system that can only bring in less than 5 people at any given time of day is worthless. Fix your content. You have a fairly low number of subscribers for a reason, and the reason is while the game's graphics look really impressive, the game design is not competitive. If your game primarily appeals to people that use it as a graphical chat room, then maybe you should focus a little bit more on the game part of massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and a little less on the role-playing part. So what is my final verdict on this game? It has a few things I really like, but I can't see myself playing the game until it has some real endgame content. I took a character from level 1 to 50 in a span of 2 weeks to play, which was a total of 97 hours. So it's not a game that requires a heavy time investment, but I do feel a bit empty inside after getting to level 50 because there is no endgame content. No endgame content. I had this really cool character who can do the same exact things I did to get my character to level 50. Sound like fun?